Uh, Again, welcome to the Antioch College Virtual Reunion 2021. We're excited to start the main reunion program by honoring one of our most dedicated faculty members and tireless supporters of Antioch College, Peter Townsend. That presentation will be followed by presentations of the finalists for the Winning Victories grants, the 2021 Victory Grants. We'll be talking more about that later. I'm April Wolford. I'm the Acting Vice President for Advancement and Director of Alumni Relations for Antioch College. I'm also a member of the class of 1992 and the producer of this event. I'm also delighted to introduce Mary Evans right here, who is a class of 2020 and our new events and social media manager. She just started in her new role this week, and she will be producing these events going forward and will be assuming the hosting role for many of the virtual reunion events coming up. So welcome to Mary.
Thank
We're
you so much.
delighted to have her. And now, without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce Karen Mulhauser, class of 1965, president of the Alumni Association, and Tony Dosick, class of 1967, who's the chair of the Alumni Board's Reunion Committee. Karen?
Well, it's wonderful to see all of you. Of course, it would be much better to see you in person on campus, and maybe next year that will happen. Yes, I am the president of the Alumni Association and chair of the Alumni Board, and it's a pleasure for me to welcome you to the first event of Anti-October. There will be several others, and April will guide us to those on the website. And today it's going to be wonderful to hear Pete and receiving an award, but there's also, and we'll hear about it later, another part of this opening program, which is the Winning Victories grants candidates. So the Alumni Board actually will be meeting later this month, some of us on campus, some of us virtual, and it will be my last meeting as the president, but the new president will sit next to me as I'm the immediate past president. I've enjoyed this time working with so many alums at Antioch College, and look forward to seeing you all later.
Hi, I'm Tony Dosick, class of 67, chair of the reunion committee. And before I introduce Scott Saunders, a big thank you to April and now to Mary for all the work to do to get Reunion 2021. I don't think there's anybody in this world that appreciates the help that they have given me and us more than me. And I am really pleased to introduce Scott Sanders, who is the director of Antiochiana, and somebody I have relied on time after time, who I think of as, he was the first employee hired after Antioch reopened, and which is perfectly appropriate because he is sort of the keeper of the history of the college, not sort of, literally the keeper. And I think as continuity, it makes a lot of sense. Scott, in turn, is going to introduce the J.D. Dawson Award winner, Pete Townsend.
Thanks, Tony. Hi, everybody. It's my pleasure today to confer the 2021 J.D. Dawson Award for support and service to the college. The J.D. Dawson Award recognizes significant contributions to Antioch College by alumni or friends of Antioch. Nominees for this award should be persons who have contributed in a significant way to Antioch College or a program of Antioch College, like me in 2011 and Peter today. Perhaps best known for his involvement with the co-op department, J.D. Dawson's entire career was dedicated to Antioch College. And coincidentally, so was Peter Townsend's. Peter got his undergraduate degree at Williams College and did graduate work at the University of Vermont and the University of Texas in Austin. He started teaching at Antioch College in 1971. His geology colleague was a man named John White. In 1975, not too long after he got here, as it turns out, Peter was elected chair of the whole science area. And then in 1976, he wrote a successful $234,000 National Science Foundation grant for environmental science education. It's a lot of money in those days. In 1977, he wrote a successful $500,000 Kellogg Foundation grant for the science building renovation. Guy brought in a lot of dough. In 1979, Antioch University, which we were part of by then, went broke, and along with the rest of his colleagues, Peter endured 5 months of payless paydays. And then in 1985, his longtime geology colleague, John White, retired. The regular teaching course at that time was 6 courses a year. The geology major would have disappeared with John's retirement. And so because Peter couldn't stand to see that happen, he willingly taught 10 courses a year. Whew. During the 1990s, before Antioch University eliminated all the majors at the college in 2006, Peter enjoyed his most prolific teaching years in terms of the geology and environmental science majors that he advised and taught. And always being interested in using geologic knowledge to help solve environmental problems. In 1989, Peter started consulting on environmental problems, mostly related to groundwater issues. He would hire students on co-op to work with him. And that is the Peter Townsend bio, a genuine rock star, though I do not think he plays guitar. It's at this time I want to invite people who are here today to post questions to Peter in the Zoom chat box, and along the way I hope to get with we'll ask the questions there. And now I'm going to talk to Peter. All right. Well, congratulations on your Dawson Award today.
Thank you. I'm certainly honored to receive this.
Do you have time for me to ask you some questions?
I sure do.
Peter, tell us how you got to Antioch College in the first place.
Well, it was 1971. I was looking for a job. It was a recession year, so there weren't too many available. I was lucky. Many of the ones that were available were for geologists interested in environmental problems. It came down to 2 jobs. One was Boston College, and the other one was Antioch College. And they offered the same pay, but the cost of living in Boston was so expensive. I chose Antioch, but not just for that. When I came for the interview, the tradition was for students to take interviewees to the Antioch Inn. The Antioch Inn, for those of you who aren't old enough to remember it, was in the southwest corner of the student union. And in those days, it was noted as the best eating establishment in the region. So I had 6 or 7 students who took me to dinner at the inn. And after they asked me a lot of questions, I asked them, tell me about your best co-op. And by the time they were finished, I wanted to be a faculty member at Antioch College. I was so impressed with Antioch students compared to undergraduates at other schools, which I had known. And so my whole time at Antioch, I was just blessed to have great students.
So you joined quite a science faculty when you came when I was 5. And so would you describe some of the more memorable members of the science faculty that you joined?
I certainly will, and I hope you have images of them. This is a sample. This is not all of the faculty. There were over 20 faculty members when I came. And here's Don Myatt. Don taught civil engineering. And he started the communications program. So after the engineering program kind of wound down during the Vietnam era, he got interested in communications, and Antioch's communications program. Oh, we're going too fast there.
Oh, sorry. All right.
So there's Richard Yeoman. Yeoman was a chemistry professor. Many of you will remember him, I think. Oliver Loud. Oliver Loud was kind of an all-around science faculty member, and famous with the older alums for running the general education program in science. And there's Martin Murie. Martin didn't stay on the faculty very long, but he certainly made a great impression for those who remember him. He was a vertebrate zoologist. Jim Howell. Jim started just a year before me. He was a brilliant teacher, extremely popular. He taught biology and just a famous teacher. He died in an airplane accident in 1985. So he was only at the college for 15 years. But
Do you know
boy,
where he
what a
was
great,
headed in that plane?
excuse me?
Do you know where he was headed in that plane, Peter, when it went down?
Yes. His PhD was in ornithology, and he was headed for the peninsula that sticks out from Antarctica towards South America. And the peninsula got fogged in and they flew into the side of a mountain. So there were a number of ornithologists or birders on the trip. And here's Warren Z. Watson. Warren taught math and history of science. And he was kind of a all around, he was very interested in collecting trilobites, fascinated with whitewater canoeing, quite a person. Al Stewart. Al retired soon after I got here, but he made quite an impression on me. And apparently I didn't get to know him real well, but he was just a real gentleman. And for a while, he was dean of faculty.
And I think he's an Antiochian.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, class of 41, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
Who's your predecessor?
And there's my colleague, John White. Man, isn't he handsome? By the time I arrived, or just about the time I arrived in 1971, John started in the 50s. He was having cluster headaches, which are such awful headaches that people sometimes commit suicide so they won't get the next one. And so he wasn't as functional while I was his colleague as he had been when he was younger, but he was still real sharp. When he wasn't having
John's most famous student, Peter?
Oh, his most famous student was Antioch's most famous science graduate, Stephen J. Gould. And Stephen, I don't know if they still have Stephen on YouTube, but when you looked at Stephen giving lectures on YouTube, he was just a clone of John White. He just followed John White's style of lecturing completely. It was just amazing. I was just dumbfounded. I could have been looking at John White, but I was looking at Stephen J. Gould.
Well, there you are.
We
we're already talking about you. What's that
Okay.
around your neck, Peter?
Oh, that's a 10-power hand magnifier, which geologists very frequently carry so that they can see minerals and rocks better than they would with just regular vision.
Yeah, I thought it was a referee's whistle.
So we missed Bob Deary.
Oh no,
There he is. Great. So Bob was my mentor. I didn't even know what the word mentor was. I don't think I'd ever heard it. But Bob very gently, very professionally took me under his wing and introduced me to Antioch. Bob graduated from Antioch in the late 40s. He started before World War II, and then he was in the military for the World War II and then came back. And he was a specialist in marine single cell things, Keating-Nass, which I think are single cell things. Ah, and there's Bill Weitzel.
I love that shirt.
Yeah, Bill never, I mean, he aged a little bit, but he really never changed. And he was a physics professor right up until the college fired him in 2008, along with all the rest of us. Ah, Ed Samuel. Ed was the molecular biology professor. And he was very well loved and respected by all of the biology students. And he taught gen ed biology, and that was very popular also. Ed left because his wife got a PhD and got a job in Connecticut. And earlier we showed a picture of Jim Howell. Jim stepped in, even though he didn't get hired to do it, he stepped into Ed Samuel's shoes and taught molecular biology.
And there's Don again.
And there's Don again. So we've done it.
And so just for fun for me, Don married a class member of the class of 1953, Nina Myatt, who ran Antioch for 35 years.
Yes, Nina is a precious. In fact, she ought to get the Dawson Award sometime.
She might have already had it in 2010. The first 2009. It was the first reunion after the college came back.
Okay.
So Peter, we've talked about the people that you worked with. What was it like to teach Antioch students?
Oh, Antioch students, after they've been in a couple of co-ops, become real mature learners, much more like teaching graduate students than undergrads. I loved it. They give and take. They wouldn't take guff from a faculty member. It was just fun teaching Antioch students. With my 10-course load, I can say that I wasn't a brilliant teacher in any of those classes, but I did the best I could. And I think I did adequately given the great success that so many of my students have had.
So that kept you on the job for so long. I mean, basically the fun that it was to work with students at Antioch College. But all good things must come to an end. And what were the circumstances that made you decide to retire?
Well, of course, I didn't decide to retire. I was fired. The university, being a continuing corporation with faculty positions at centers all across the country, could have laid faculty off and given us the option of applying for jobs at other centers, but they chose to fire us. They were mean and nasty about it. One of the things was they allowed us tenured faculty members to apply for emeritus faculty status. And then they awarded emeritus faculty status to one faculty member and sent us a letter to all the rest of us saying, "You're not good enough to be emeritus at our institution." They were good people.
I was there for that. And so that would be 2008, right? When you ended your teaching career, but yes, you had already started a pretty interesting sidelight as an environmental consultant. And so you had to have some highlights from that other part of your career.
Yeah. I had a number of opportunities to help mostly environmental groups with issues where they were disagreeing with Ohio EPA or US EPA. But the most successful site was actually a nuclear site south of Dayton. Nuclear bombs age. The radioactive stuff in them gets old and they don't have as much pop as they did when they were new. And so the government has to renew them. And for many, many years, from just after World War II until sometime, 88 or 89, I'm looking at Rachel, my daughter, when they decided, well, what they did is they flew the nuclear bombs into Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, put them on a special train car, drove them about 20 miles south to Miamisburg, where there was a thing called Mound Laboratories. And Mound Laboratories was really just, they had some sidekicks, but mostly they were renewing old nuclear bombs. So you can imagine this is a pretty populated region, Dayton, Cincinnati, and all the stuff in between. So we had nuclear bombs in this facility that were being disassembled, fixed, and reassembled, and then put on a train car, taken back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and flown to wherever they wanted to put them. Well, US Department of Energy, in its wisely probably, decided that fixing nuclear bombs in the middle of a very populated region wasn't a great idea. So they then moved the nuclear bomb fixing stuff to some other location, secret location. And they began to clean up the site of radioactivity. You can imagine, with all those years of fixing nuclear bombs, there was lots of radioactivity in the soil. And at that point, my daughter Rachel, who graduated from Antioch in 2002,
yes,
was working full-time with me. And our primary consulting was on the Mound Laboratory site. And we found contamination, and the Department of Energy, although they were told they were supposed to clean the site up, didn't want to clean the site up. And so they were hiding 2 sites. But one of them was actually off site. It was down in the community. Plutonium had washed down in a rainstorm. It had washed down the hill and into a historic canal that was at the bottom of the hill and spread out laterally along the canal. And the Department of Energy had investigated the contamination in the canal and had written a report where they only looked at the top 6 inches. And the top 6 inches had very little contamination in it because it was stuff that washed in after the plutonium washed in. But they had in the appendix of a report that had data down to about 5 feet. And there was a lot of plutonium below the top 6 inches. And I was able to demonstrate that, or we were able to demonstrate that, and they had to clean that up. And then there was another site where, it was just amazing. They hired a consultant who claimed that wells were not located in the direction and places where they were, and presented the data in such a small slide that you couldn't see it. Well, just by coincidence, we showed up. Rachel had gotten the same data that he had, and we showed up with big slides that showed real contamination, a lot of contamination at this site. And then the Department of Energy went and submitted this other guy's report that said there was no contamination to Congress. And then Rachel and the person we were working for, her name is Sharon Cowdery, and she ran a operation called Miamisburg Environmental Safety and Health, MESH. Rachel and Sharon went to Washington, and Rachel presented our data and analysis to the chair of the Energy Committee for the House of Representatives. And just by coincidence, Mound Laboratory was located in his district. And it was Dave Hobson. Some of you will remember him. He was a Republican back in the days when Republicans had brains. And so he brought in his experts, heard Rachel's presentation, and immediately they said, Department of Energy, clean that mess up. And they did. And the two sites cost over $100 million to clean up. Yeah. Now, compared to the federal budget, that's not
Doesn't sound
too
like much money right now, does it? Well, you two are an amazing team. Obviously, those are incredible stories. And just what remarkable dual careers you had after coming to Ohio. So that's everything I want to ask Peter. I want to invite people to ask questions of him in the chat. There are several lovely comments to you, Peter, but since I'm here to ask you questions, I'm only going to respond directly to the ones that are questions.
Can I have one more thing?
This is your show.
Okay. A significant reason for why I am getting the J.D. Dawson Award is that when the faculty were fired, tenured faculty had in our contract specific procedures that were supposed to be taken in order to fire us. Well, in its arrogance, the university ignored that and fired us without following our procedure. So the faculty sued, the tenured faculty sued the university for firing us illegally. And I was the lead plaintiff. And mostly I was the lead plaintiff because I was turning 65 just as we got fired. Chances of me getting a job at that age were pretty slim. And so I was willing to be the lead plaintiff. Now, of course, we didn't win the lawsuit. Had we won the lawsuit, we would have been no administration, no maintenance workers, no staff, just faculty, no students. And of course, the university would have fired us legally the next day. So I think the court just kind of did a wink and a nod and accepted the lawsuit because we did have standing, because they had not followed our procedures. And once we got the lawsuit filed, we were able to put an injunction on removing the buildings on campus. And at the Board of Trustees meeting where they voted to close the college, they had a report that said they were going to tear down all the buildings on campus and build a retirement community for the military on Antioch College campus. A bizarre plan, but clearly they were intending to tear the buildings down. And our lawsuit allowed a moratorium to be put on that while the lawsuit was in effect. And so that allowed the alumni to buy the college with buildings intact. Okay.
And now you know why he's my hero. What do we have? 8-10 minutes left? So Peter, I have a couple of questions.
10 minutes.
Okay. Peter, there's a couple of questions in the chat. One, do you have any stories about your graduate thesis?
Depends on which thesis you're talking about.
Pick one.
I have one for my master's.
Better story.
And it was on studying minerals in the sediments of Lake Champlain between Vermont and New York State. And, it was interesting, but I never finished my PhD, but I did several drafts of my dissertation. And the dissertation was on the geology, environmental aspects of geology between Austin and San Antonio, which my advisor was the state geologist in Texas. And it wasn't really a research project, and which PhDs are supposed to do research. It was really a state geologic report. And so eventually I figured that out and figured, hey, that's not really a PhD thing. And went on to be an Antioch professor instead of a PhD.
Our old friend Louise Champagne asks if you would briefly acknowledge your role in saving the college in 1983.
Well, I will acknowledge my part in that, but really, Louise saved the college in 1983. Louise and I were working together. She was CM, and there was a committee to discuss a new curriculum. And on the committee was Louise and myself and one other faculty member from the college, and then people from the university, and there were a couple of hired guns who were consultants. So the curriculum that was invented mostly by one of the consultants was clearly intended to kill the college. One of the elements of it was that no course at the college could be taught with fewer than 10 students. And this consultant was dean at, I think, Barnard College. And so I called up the registrar at Barnard and asked how many students were in senior level classes in several majors like physics and philosophy. And there were fewer than 10 students. No big surprise. But so the curriculum that had been cooked up for Antioch College would have killed the college this guy was dean at. Still, even though that was reported and other issues with the curriculum that were clearly designed to kill the college, the Board of Trustees, after hearing my report, and Louise was really great at talking about the history of the college and pulling some heartstrings on the board, so that the people of the board would remember what it was like when they were students. So the board voted to not vote on the curriculum change and send Louise and myself and this consultant, the dean of Barnard College, off to work on an alternative. Well, the dean wasn't giving, and I just gave up. I got up and left. Louise by that time was crying. And I thought, well, that's the end of it. Well, lo and behold, Louise prevailed, and the dean of Barnard gave up, and we came back the next day, and the board was suggested that we throw the new curriculum design into the faculty of Antioch College. And that's what happened. So we had a real curriculum. So we saved the college, mostly Louise did, that time, but nobody saved it in 2008.
We have just a couple of minutes left, so I only have time for one more question, which is, tell us about the book you're working on.
So when I got organized after Antioch closed and I got fired, I thought, gee, I would love to write a history of the Glen. And so I spent a few months writing a history of the Glen. And of course, it's almost all words and things that I am fascinated with that wouldn't fascinate many other people. And after a while, I realized, man, nobody's going to read this damn thing. But in the process, I discovered huge numbers of historic photos in Antioch. So I switched, and now I'm doing a photo history, which isn't a thorough history of Glen Helen. And it was almost ready to go when the pandemic hit. So it really needs public presentations. So I kind of put it on hold until the pandemic is over.
Peter, I've seen several questions of about you and environmental field program. But it's my understanding that you really didn't participate in that program.
Well, let me explain the program first.
Yes,
so
you
that
go ahead.
Some people, the environmental field program was invented by several students and Bob Beery. The story goes over some beer and marijuana in an evening session. And the idea was that a couple of student leaders would take less senior students on field trips. And the first one was the summer of 1971. And we ran 4 programs a year with Rodney Bean as the on-campus coordinator. My role, along with other faculty in environmental science, was to review students' applications to run these programs. And then the students would set up courses with faculty so that the students and the faculty members together would write syllabi, and the field programs went to different places each year. So we'd write syllabi that were specific to the area the students were going to. And so I was faculty advisor for one of those courses for most EFPs. And I was on the committee that selected the EFPs. I never went on an EFP. Faculty generally didn't go on the EFPs. They were led by students. And so there were up to 10 participants and 2 leaders, and they would go for 10 weeks into the environment of some region of the country and study it in depth. It was a great program. Students generally just loved it. And it was life-changing for many of the students, and academic changing, I should say, for many of the students. So that was my role. And it was a great program. It went until I think 2004.
Once again, we're about out of time. I don't know how many times I've said that. But on a personal note, Peter and I have worked together since the mid-1990s. I always appreciated, for instance, that when I got roped into teaching Ohio history, he would handle the geology section for me. And he was a lot of fun to watch, share information. He's even better at finding engaging slides than I am. And in recent times, particularly after he retired, well, of course, when I was teaching, he was already retired. I've very much enjoyed helping him with the book that we were talking about, and finding the photographs and the deep dives that we did on the legal cases surrounding the college acquiring water rights to the Yellow Spring, and the insight that we got into the, shall we say, the courtroom life of John Bryan, who owned the spring before we did, and seemed to have spent his entire life in court. But we learned just a tremendous amount about how the college and Arthur Morgan acquired the spring and ultimately Glen Helen, and how many times it may not have happened at all. And that required a lot of legwork, a lot of skepticism of what we thought we knew already. And I think only the combination of a geologist and a historian can pull that off. So congratulations, Peter. You're joining a very exclusive club of Dawson laureates, including me and Steve Duffy and Nina Myatt and Bob Fogarty, and just thanks. I've really enjoyed our time together.
Oh, thank you.